walk me through the drafting of Derrick Harmon. You basically told us you didn't just drop breadcrumbs, you dropped a loaf of bread about how the Steelers were interested in a defensive lineman at 21 overall, and that's who they took, the kid out of Oregon. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, Rich, and that is their most glaring weakness, and actually has been for the last couple of years. Not to mention the fact that line was getting older. They really haven't addressed it. Oh, a third-round pick, a fifth-round pick. Okay, I know they got Keanu Benton 2 years ago on the second round, and he's a nice piece, but they needed to find a what they feel is a dominant potential Pro Bowl type of tackle, another Cam Hayward, and they feel they got that in Derrick Harmon. Now, I will tell you, they had identified three guys: Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, and Derrick Harmon. And I would say of the three, Grant and Harmon would be the favorites. Of course, both of those others were off the board, but they knew they were going to take one of those three. And if all three were there, well, like I said, it might have been a coin flip between Harmon and Grant. But they got one of the guys they wanted. They had to get a defensive lineman. They could have any quarterback they want behind center. If they don't fix that defensive line, it's not going to matter. And it's something that they had to do. And if they didn't, it would have been the highest form of negligence. They did do it. And you know what? Shout out to them. And
in terms of Harmon, I saw from your posting about his personal story, Gerry, that his mom, who had been ill for a very long time and had been occupying a lot of his time to be with, not just at the beginning of his college career, but during the draft process. My colleague in Hour 3, Tom Pelissero, reporting that Harmon had to cancel a lot of his visits or meetings because he wanted to be with his mom, that he was able to tell his mom that he got drafted by the Steelers, and then she passed away, which just blew me away. And I'm wondering what other details that you might know about that you're willing to share about that 24-hour period involving Derrick Harmon, Gerry.
Well, Rich, I think, first of all, I think everybody was both saddened and touched. And, with what happened, when we talked to him shortly after he was picked, he said, when I hang up with you guys, I'm going straight to the hospital to tell my mom, who was on life support, that I just been drafted. And if that doesn't touch at your heartstrings, nothing does. And then to find out, that the next morning that she had passed away shortly after he got to the hospital and was able to tell her that he had been drafted by the Steelers. I mean, that just made it all the more both gut-wrenching and heartfelt. So, typically what the Steelers do, and probably a lot of teams, but the Steelers always do this, they bring their number one draft pick into town the next day. They let them meet with the media, and then they take them over to some Steelers-centric events that they have going on during the draft. He came into town. But he did not take part in those. They just thought the Steelers were going to try and show, obviously, the proper respect and not have him do those things. But, he's as you can quite imagine by what's gone on, a really nice kid. They were impressed that he even wanted to come to town. And I believe, Rich, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm fairly certain he was going to fly in, but his flight was delayed. And because he was in Michigan, he drove in, and which is like we had somebody driving, which is like a 5-hour drive, because he wanted to come into town. So that at least tells you what type of kid he is, but what also he has been dealing with throughout this whole ordeal.
Unbelievable. And I know, when I had Tomlin on Saturday talking to him, he was talking about how the Steelers are further down the road connecting with a first-round draft choice as a new member of their family because of this with Derrick Harmon. And I'm sure they're giving him his space, and at some point we'll give him the usual first-round draft pick welcome into the Pittsburgh Steelers town there. Let's move on back to the draft. The fact that they went Caleb Johnson with the third-round pick, another need, right? Was there a choice to maybe grab Omarion Hampton 21st overall because he went 22? Do you know if that was it, or it was just defensive lineman no matter what first
Well,
round.
Rich, I will tell you that was plan B if none of the three guys that I mentioned were available. They were prepared to go running back. And so it would have been, obviously they assumed Ashton Genty would be gone. So then it was going to be a Marion Hampton and or Travian Henderson. Those would have been the options because beyond those three defensive linemen, and they assumed, of course, Mason Graham would be gone early, which of course he was. So that was kind of plan B. So the fact that they went for running back on the third round without that second round pick, not a surprise at all. I've thought all along that their order of drafting would be defensive line, running back, wide receiver maybe, or edge rusher, which surprised me. But the more I thought about it, I understood why and why they drafted Jack Sawyer and then quarterback in there as well somewhere. And that's basically the way it unfolded. In fact, it was the way it unfolded. So the way that they attacked it based on what they thought they were going to do was pretty much spot on. And they identified those areas and they were able to address them, I think, with quality players, including getting Will Howard on the 6th round. The only surprise to me, and it wasn't a surprise when you consider, again, what they need to do with that defensive line, was taking Yahweh Black on the 5th round. I thought maybe that's where we were going to see a quarterback. But again, getting a big-bodied guy, another young guy to restock that defensive line, which, as I mentioned earlier, was starting to age.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.